can readily understand what it would take to change a charter. The word charter, if nobody has told you, is from the Latin for contract, carta, and if you think of it, it's a social contract, and as a result, contracts often have to be updated and revised. So, next please. Some of the comparable charter characteristics that at the Florida League of Cities we take the time to study is the size of the council or the commission. 5 is our most common number. We have 7s. We have 6s where the mayor is usually non-voting or votes in the event of a tie. We go all the way up to Jacksonville at 19, and we have a couple of cities in Florida with 3. I will say those are the outliers. The cities at 3 are all under 100 in population, and the one at 19, Jacksonville, it's important to remember it's both a county and a city, formed under a city charter, and so their legislative body is quite large. We also pay attention to the lengths of the term for the elected officials. 2 and 4 are the most common. The compromise number of 3, however, we do see in Florida cities. 2 is too few, 4 is too many, and so they compromised on 3. In addition, in some councils, they will set the term of the mayor differently from the council, and those go hand in hand usually to try and line it up for the election cycle. That's rare out of 411. Most common is for all of them to be on staggered terms and in the 2 and 4 year cycles. The way the members of the council or commission are elected is also something that we track and survey. Originally, thinking of the true at-large method where everyone votes for all seats, and that's true at-large, kind of hold that to one side. Single-member district is living within a prescribed boundary, and then only those persons within those same boundaries may vote on that seat. That is single-member district. Over the decades, particularly in the early 1940s and 50s, a compromise was desired that maybe looked a little like single-member district and a little bit like at-large, and they came up with what is called a seated council. And that is that you live in a prescribed district or ward, and then you run at large. And so we do see that. The 4th way is to do a combination on the council of at-large plus single-member district. And the example I usually give is Daytona Beach with its 7 seats. Some of them are single-member district, some of them are at-large, and that includes the mayor's seat. It's up to each city, obviously, to decide what balance works best for them. We do see staggered more than any other, which means maybe they run in terms of 2 seats, 1 seat, or 3 seats and 2 seats staggered in time, so that a city does not lose its institutional knowledge in the course of one election cycle. There are also 3 ways to select the mayor. What Tallahassee has is elected at large, where the mayor holds the mayoral seat for the entirety of that term. In some cities, particularly those with the council manager form of government, the mayor can also rotate or be elected from within the council each year on the anniversary date of the organizational meeting for the city. In the election role, you could elect the same person repeatedly. In the rotational role, it goes by seat, A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4, and then goes back to the beginning. It is not an election. Next slide, please. In Florida, this is the common vocabulary that we use to talk about the forms. I'll give my standard caution that weak and strong have nothing to do with the mayor's personality. This refers to what the charter prescribes as what is specific to the role of mayor. What we brought over from Great Britain is the council weak mayor. In Florida, we do not find this in larger cities, but this position, this form has no centralized administrative position. In other words, no administrator, no manager. The council collectively hires and fires the directors of the various departments, The clerk functions not only in the record-keeping role, but sometimes in a communications hub, because the part-time counsel is working with those directors on their service delivery, whether that is police, fire, water, sewer, planning, land use, etc. There is no administrator position or manager. And again, these are smaller cities, that is the original form brought over from Great Britain, and the mayor was intended to be ceremonial. And what we usually say is this means presiding at the meetings, presenting the proclamations and the keys to the city, very much just a ceremonial role with no additional authority. About 80 cities in Florida, all of them about 20,000 to 22,000 or less population out of the 411. For council strong mayor, again, not the mayor's personality, but this mayor is an elected executive. He or she is defined as being the implementer of the actions of the legislative body. In most cases, this mayor does not vote. This mayor is considered full-time. This mayor hires and fires all staff, prepares the budget, and implements the actions of the council. It is common among the 6 largest cities in Florida as a form, and that would be Jacksonville, Tampa, Orlando, Miami, Hialeah. It is about 40 to 43, depending on which political scientists are reading the charter. It found in about 43 out of the 411 cities in Florida. I have to mention the commission form, although this has largely gone away. This was very popular around 1910, where each commissioner is elected and then is assigned specific departments to run. A roads commissioner, a water commissioner, a police commissioner, a fire commissioner. It was made very popular in the movie Batman to describe Gotham. However, since Batman, it has largely fell out of use. We do still have 2 Florida cities with this form, but they do not use it by ordinance. They use different forms, and they've just never changed their charter. Both of those cities are at 10,000 or less population. Which leaves me with the council manager and commission manager form. This is 285 out of the 411. It is the most prevalent form in the United States. It is also the most prevalent form in Florida, largely because of the complexity of government and the desire to have a professional manager in charge of the day-to-day operations of the city, and to be able to make recommendations to the commission or council based upon that expertise. The hallmarks of this form, and you know it from seeing Tallahassee's charter, is that the manager hires and fires staff. The manager presents the budget each year. The manager makes recommendations to the commission. And again, it is the most prevalent. We also have a handful in Florida, if you're doing the math, to get to 411 that are hybrids. Apalachicola, being a neighbor or near neighbor of Tallahassee's, is one that will be familiar to you. Their form is a blend of all of the above that I've just discussed, and it works well for Apalachicola, but it means I can't count them or put them in a column. And so other than to a political scientist, these forms don't matter in terms of the numbers. What matters is, does the form work for the respective city itself? Next. So I made some comparisons for Tallahassee, and this information's been shared in the next slide. I looked at interior and non-coastal, because that's how Tallahassee sits. For the forms of government, all of them are council manager, and the seats vary with 8 on the largest. That should not say 9, I'm sorry. And the rest having 5. Next slide, let's go ahead and go to the chart. It'll be easier. So Port St. Lucie at the top, this is a very fast-growing city in slightly in southeast Florida. You'll recognize all of the rest of the cities. I felt Lakeland and Gainesville were important comparisons because they're also electric cities, and there are less than 30 electric municipalities left in Florida, and so being able to make that comparison is usually helpful. I put Tallahassee as close to the middle as I could in terms of the population. and you'll see the size of the councils, which include the mayor. And you'll note for Cape Coral that that is 8 with the mayor, meaning that if there is a tie, it dies and is brought back at a later date, or it's simply set aside. I did put a note at the bottom for CM referring to council manager. And next slide, please. There are some best practices for charter reviews, and in working in the last 30 years with a number of cities, some of these that come easily is that with the advent of technology, having the public really becomes easier, and with the use of a website to be able to share the information. When I started out, the only way to get information out about the city charter was to share it with clubs and groups and organizations, to actually post these things on the bulletin boards inside Publix and at the public library. So we've certainly come a long way. Having staff and the members of the committee work well together in a short span of time obviously is a goal for any charter review committee. And being able to have information readily available on the website are probably 2 of the biggest best practices that I can share. In addition, with the last bullet, knowing that there are civic groups around Tallahassee that would welcome the opportunity to host a discussion should there be elements that proceed to the ballot, so that those organizations can provide a forum at which people can discuss the charter and whatever is being desired for an amendment. That is really helpful in gathering and in enhancing the public's understanding of the charter and any changes that might get made. Next slide, please. One of the things we usually caution on is in charters over the last 30 years, the mistakes that we see getting made are to put similar powers under 2 different groups. For example, the authority of the council and the manager having the same authority can be very confusing and legally puts you in a real dilemma. There are a number of cities that have had to go in and work on their charters due to that. The other is not getting too specific for qualifying for elections in the charter because it's so date driven, and in order to amend it, it means taking it back to the public, but rather instead putting that into ordinances and not the charter. That's another best practice. And as the attorneys often remind me, less is more when it comes to writing in a charter, and the broader the better. So next slide, please. I'm often asked what are the trends that we see in Florida for municipal charters. And since World War II, the trend has been towards the council manager and commission manager form of government. All 26 of the municipal incorporations that have occurred since 1980, the council or commission manager form of government. This, again, is largely because of the complexity of government and the need to be able to run, for example, utilities, the growth management, comprehensive planning, and land use demands in Florida. We certainly see that statistically tied together. I'm also usually asked what's the right amount of time if a city wants to put a time period into its charter. Now, that is not required. We have a number of cities where the timing of a charter review process is left up to the council or the commission. However, for those cities that want to put a time frame in, I see 10 to 20-year periods. For new cities, they usually do a 5-year review because it's what's called a starter charter, but that is not Tallahassee's case. It's one of our oldest cities in the state. So it's really up to the city itself to decide whether or not to put a time period in, because in always the provision that it can be brought up for review by the council or commission itself, and usually by petition of the public if desired. Next. The Model City Charter was written in the 1890s by Teddy Roosevelt when he was police commissioner of New York City, and they were trying to dismantle Tammany Hall. And in putting together a Model City Charter, every decade since, a group called the National Civic League has posed questions to help charter review committees with their work. I share these and I won't read them out loud to you, but this is an example of the work that the National Civic League does to help charter review committees with their work and to help the public better understand the essence of charters and the importance of participating in the charter review process. And I think my last slide here is just to point towards the resources themselves, website-wise, not already with Matt on the city staff and Mr. Cook, and so they've got access to a lot of that information. And David, I believe the last slide for me is just the request for questions. And I know the committee's time is brief, so I did go through that very rapidly. I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions.
Let me say thank you, first of all, Ms. Tipton, for the discussion really on the charter and things that are really relevant to what we actually were charged to read for tonight's meeting. So let me open it up, though, to our committee members to ask any questions that you may have.
And this question is for Ms. Tipton, but also Ms. Tolman. Earlier in the presentation, you mentioned that it was, many of the charters have language regarding the amendment process. And in my review of the charter, it didn't seem to spell out how our charter is amended. Is that in the ordinance, or how does the city of Tallahassee handle amendments to the charter, and where is that provided?
It is not spelled out in the charter. That's correct. I'm gonna toss it to Jim.
That is not spelled out in the charter. I think and I'll ask Ms. Tipton to comment or correct, but I think as she identified, there really are two ways by state law that charter amendments are made. One is for the elected body, in our case the city commission, to place something on the ballot for referendum. The other way that happens is citizen petition. And so, though it's not spelled out in our charter, those really are the two ways provided for in state law, and therefore that's really what Tallahassee has available to follow. Lynn, is there anything you would add or correct?
Well, it doesn't have to be state law because the charter is the city's law in that it either stipulates it in an ending one of the last articles, like say if it were Article 7 in the charter, it would say the city council or commission may consider amendments to this document in processes that are set forth by ordinance. All amendments should require a referenda, which Mr. Cook just alluded to. The other way would be if a charter review committee is described in charter and it set forth its timing and procedure. The third, by petition process, is usually the petitions end up resulting in a charter review committee or work between the council, the commission, and the attorney to then prepare that. And that is usually, at least in some way, referenced in a city's charter or again by ordinance. So thanks, Jim. I hope I didn't make that worse.
Attorney James?
So it's silent.
spoke at your first meeting, and I just wanted to thank the treasurer clerk and his staff for putting up the website documenting this committee's work. Also, thank you for getting the meeting materials, the agenda, all out in advance. That was very helpful. And also I wanted to just appreciate the thoroughness of the minutes there. But my one additional suggestion, I guess, would be to put the opportunity for public comment on your agenda, so when people look at the agenda, they know there will be that opportunity. Thank you.
Duly noted. Thank you so much. We'll take one more person. Come on up.
Is this the opportunity for public comment, or is this just questions?
It's
about-
just questions about, she's
I'll
waiting,
hold my
so.
comments for-
Okay. Any other questions for our guest? If not, thank you so much. We really appreciate, Tipton, your presentation, and we may be inviting you back. So, thanks for tonight.
Hi. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and all of the members of the committee. I wish you well in your process and would be glad to assist in any way that I can. Wishing you all the best and have a great night.
Thank you. So tonight, we have on the agenda, functions 1 and 2, if we can get to those two tonight. And if not, obviously, we will pick it back up where we leave it at our next meeting. So as we start our meeting tonight, I'd like to first reference, and this is just so that we can stay very focused on what the topic is as we talk tonight. So as we look under the functions of the committee, number 1 is to review the number of electors or voting members to compose the governing body of the city of Tallahassee as reflected in section 9 of the city charter. Section 9 of the city charter states, creation, composition, election, and terms. There is hereby created a city commission to consist of 5 electors of the city, elected at large. Commissioners who shall be elected beginning with the year 1976 and subsequently for a full term shall hold office for 4 years beginning on the date after election specified in section 17 of the city charter. And I wanted to start there because I want us to stay, if we can, I know that we can, within the box of what we should be actually deliberating on tonight. Now, I am certainly open to committee, if you would like to talk about, you have suggestions about how we can deliberate tonight. I have my own idea, but I'm open to hear from you regarding our deliberations tonight as we start to look at function number 1, the number of electors. I will say we have a plethora, and that's probably not big enough, of information. Thank you, Mr. Cook. That we needed.
I will share that thanks with others on our staff, but you're welcome.
Absolutely. That we requested for tonight's meeting, and we can actually, if you would like, start in the discussion of the documents before we get to number 1. What is the pleasure of the committee? Anyone? Yes.
Can we hear from the public first on the issue before we get into it, or did you want to wait? Because I imagine once we start discussing, there's a possibility of motions,
Absolutely.
and so.
Yeah, we're going to them first, but I want us to at least decide what we're going to do. And then we will open it up to the public, and then we will start our official deliberations. Does that make sense? Everybody good with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, public. Whoever wants to come up, remember, give us your name and address, and if you can confine your comments to no more than 5 minutes, because obviously we have a lot to do tonight. Go ahead.
Stanley Sims, 1320 Avondale Way. Thank you so much, Mr. Willis, for, because in your deliberations, I'm really not, I don't feel I'm intelligent enough to make a decision of 1. Because I don't have enough data. I don't know what that action, what's going to be the reaction from that action. How is that going to impact representation of the board, diversity of the board. I don't know, just enough, because I am complex to the point that 5 is not working. But I'm not at the point, Madam Vice Chair, where I'm convinced 7 is better. So I've just gotta let you all know, so in your deliberation, maybe you can convince or dissuade me in telling me, also, if we're going to go to that, I would recommend a combination of a district and an at-large that's similar to the county. And if we move to a 7, I would really would like for you guys to tell us, you know, how that's going to work in the details. And I also want to tell you, Madam Chair, I want to, not just you, Madam Chair, but thank everyone for doing this. This is going to be very educational for me. And so it's the diversity of this board is very important. The representation, and then if we went to 7 with the minute knowledge that I have, I just think that we just couldn't go to 7 with the current, was that the CM process? I think that it would call for different type of processes. And Madam Vice Chair, I don't know the name of it, but Robert's Rules and Order. In the county, and this is maybe my poor way of explaining, in the county, they operate by Robert Rules and Order. So there are certain policies that are in sec. When I came up and I want to buy me a new Denali, and I got 3 commissioners on my side, and I don't have 2. Well, the process over there is, if it ain't on the agenda, it's unanimous. You understand what I'm saying? So those are kind of little, if we move to 7, I think that we would have to have those finite details that will generate those desired outcomes that we want, that all voices can be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Anyone else?
Yes, thank you. My name is Will Crowley. It really works the way it's supposed to nowadays. You know, Google search doesn't give me half the time what I expect it to give me when I'm searching. My email is so full of junk mail and scams and spam that it's basically not usable. I can't even answer my phone without from a phone number I don't recognize without someone saying, hey, what about your car's extended warranty, you know? And that's kind of how I feel about government nowadays, and that's how I feel about local government in particular. I look in this room and I see trusted community leaders like Dr. Struble, Ms. Dorsey, and Mr. Payne, and others, and I want to say to you, thank you for your service. It means a lot to me. But I also must apologize to you on behalf of this community. Because this committee should be the culmination of your life's work. It should be the culmination of your life's work, an opportunity to ensure that our charter protects us, protects the members of this community from those who would exploit our community and enrich themselves at our expense. Yet instead, this committee has been infiltrated and is indeed at risk of outright capture by such individuals, who I'm sure are texting their attorneys as I speak. I wanted to talk tonight about my concerns that expanding the commission and creating single-member districts would reduce my opportunities to cast a vote, that it would reduce the number of elections that I can vote in, that it would empower big business interests who can cut $1,000 checks from their stable of LLCs at the expense of grassroots reform efforts that already struggle to fundraise around a single race in a given election. And are consistently outspent. Not consistently beat, but consistently outspent. But frankly, I can't bring myself to waste my breath legitimizing this farce. Proposed by developer-backed politicians, citing a few dozen survey responses as its justification, it was immediately clear that the aim was to change the rules after election results that came in too close to comfort. Too close for comfort, rather. And any doubt that remained was vaporized when we saw those same developer-backed politicians appoint their own campaign to this body. Shameful. You know, maybe these interests who have bought and bullied their way into this process, maybe they'll get what they want. And these anti-democratic efforts will make it onto the ballot. But I have faith in this community. I have faith in the voters. They will see through this. And when they do see through this scheme, I know there's not a lot of people in here right now. And I know there's not a lot of people watching at home, and not that many who will watch it later. But they will see through this. And when they do, they will see each of you for who you really are. They will see inside of you, they will see your character, they will see who you are, and they will remember it for the rest of their lives. So that's what I want to ask you, those members who might be on the fence about this rushed, astroturfed process, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Will you stand up for the voices of working people, working 2 jobs, part-time, living on tips, raising their kids, trying to shuffle a few dollars into the community bucket so they can get someone who will actually fight for them? Or will you be a scab? Thank you, ma'am. Or will you be a scab? Will you be a scab for developers and big business that just see this city as an opportunity for like another chain drive-through store, another gas station? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Others from the public that would like to speak?
Hello, I'm Margaret Moore, 1910 Monticello Drive. I didn't prepare anything because I only found out about this the other day, and I'm sad to find out y'all already had a meeting. Sorry I missed it. To this issue, I'm very concerned with the cottage industry of the lobbyists and consultants and advisors and the media planners and the social media people. And there is an entire industry that we're supporting if we expand. 2 more races, 2 more campaign managers, way more PACs. Whew, it's gonna be so much money. And I feel like people who wanna earn that money are gonna want to do this. I mean, client's a client. And I often feel like people who run these things, it's not like they take the best candidate. They take the candidate who pays them the most, usually. And to whatever degree the community suffers as a result is inconsequential to those who are going to be just fine no matter what happens. And that scares me. It's been very troublesome attempting to even follow the 5 commissioners that are there now. They're not, the systems seem to be getting tighter and tighter. It's harder to track campaign finance reporting. The rules are different. Even the Tallahassee checkbook seems a little different now. Everything's not there quite. So it's really hard to go and find the proof and if you ask the wrong questions during a public records request, well, they're gonna say they don't have it because, I didn't ask them the right way. So I feel like right now, 3-2 is pretty bad. And I don't feel like a 4-3 is gonna be any better. I've just been watching all of this show. Like the all other show. But every time I think it's gonna zig, it zags. And it always shocks me. I always thought that if people just knew the truth. But ultimately it doesn't feel like the truth matters if it gets in the way of the bottom line. So to this issue, I would like to speak against expanding. Is the next item about the pay? Okay, thank you. Awesome.
Good evening, good evening, everyone. How are you? My name is Adnan Marcelin. The address for the record is 122 South Calhoun Street. I don't have a lot of comments to bring today, but I just wanted to speak to the committee, just to remind everyone to keep the citizens of Tallahassee at the forefront of this process. I've received a lot of calls about particularly this commission, and it comes from people who work, they're not able to make it. A lot of people are disheartened. We're here today because the city chose to move forward with a survey response of about 34 received, but about 29, if I'm not mistaken, the numbers that were legitimate. And the city of Tallahassee has over roughly around 200,000 residents here. And so when you're making your decision, this just similarly reminds me of the instance where we tried to put a police station on the south side. And when we listened to our community, they overwhelmingly said no. I think that the decisions that we're making here, there isn't enough public input. One of the residents, and I won't name that person's name, that gave me a comment today said, there was no effort for the citizens to put someone on this commission, to not just come here and speak to you all, but to actually weigh in. And so you all have a choice to make as individuals, and I think that, you know, as you're doing your jobs, make sure you reach out to the community, not to everyone who has access to social media. We have some residents here that don't have access to internet, and they hear this through word of mouth. I would just advise that, you know, we go out into our community, make sure they know of the changes that we're making, so that when we get to the end of the road in this discussion, that we can really look everyone and say that we made an actual effort to put community input before we're making changes. I can tell you from the people that I've spoken to that there's a lot of concern. They're concerned about the politics, where we are as a community, and the best outcome for this community really doesn't matter from those that are politically connected or those that have friends, because that's not representative of Tallahassee. The city of Tallahassee is represented from the residents that live here, and I just want to make sure that I state, please keep these residents in the forefront of your thoughts and your decision-making in this room today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else comments? All right, if not, we will get started with our deliberations. And Mr. Marcelin, let me at least say, just so for everyone's hearing, that in the first meeting, we actually talked about going, I can't find him. Oh, there you are, into the community, so that is being looked at.
Thank you.
Obviously, we have to make sure, as was brought up then, that we have the opportunity to broadcast it or make sure that others can see it and experience.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Ma'am, I have
Sure.
just a quick question, and this I think might go to Mr. Cook.
Yes.
I know we were talking about the webpage that was set up for this group. Is there a section on that webpage for public comment, to accept public comment?
I don't think we have that.
For people that aren't able to make
it.
it to meetings? I was just wondering if we had like just a way to accept, if that would be.
Yeah, we do have email address where we sometimes receive public comment, but not specific to this, so let us look at that and see if there's just a way to streamline that and make sure it's targeted.
I just want to make sure for people that aren't able
Right.
to attend these meetings, that they have an ability, and then we can hear what they think.
I'd be willing to turn that into a motion. I mean, just formally to state that as a committee, we want to see some format of public comment that can go, I mean, you're welcome to forward it to my email address. I'm sure the rest of the committee members feel the same way. Just something that anyone can go on and say, I care about this, and send it on.
I second that. That's a second.
So there's a motion that, and I'm going to try and restate what you said, and please correct me.
Sorry.
That we direct the city really to look into options to provide additional comment such that people that are part of our city can offer questions, comments regarding these deliberations. Is that close to what you were saying?
Yes, one modification.
Okay.
The idea that we're looking into it, I mean, we're on a pretty short timeline. I think that staff is, I mean, we already have this system in place in other areas, so I mean, I personally don't care how it's done, just that it's
Right.
done and that it is effective. So, I don't necessarily need it to come back to the committee for approval.
No, no.
Yeah.
So
And I
that
was
would be
not-
my intent.
Yeah, mine either. So, does the friendly amendment
Yes.
for explanation? Okay. You ready for the question?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose have the same right. Very good.
Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
I have a question that's related to process in our deliberations. I know at the, I believe the close of the last meeting, the chair outlined a process where we would receive information, take public comment, and deliberate. And my question is whether or not that process means that we would be forming recommendations at that time, or whether or not we'll have an opportunity to receive public comment on the specific issues over a larger span of time. Meaning, is it anticipated that we're gonna deliberate on this issue based upon the limited public comment that we currently have, or will we be able to,
Deliberate tonight and
And-
vote later?
yes?
Committee, I have no problem with it. Let me open it up. Anybody?
Well, I asked it in the form of a question, but my preference would be for us to have some discussion, but then not deliberate to finality until
Okay.
we have had more opportunity to receive public comment.
Everybody in agreement? I have.
Is your idea to cover all four of the topics first in discussion format and debate before we have any votes? Is that what you're saying?
I don't wanna vote until I have heard more
For
public comment.
Okay.
I'm open to discussing, or, early dialogue, but I'm not comfortable with having a discussion to any form of finality until we have broader public comment.
And I think, though, what Ernie was asking is, do we want to discuss all four before we make any final deliberation on any? Is that what you're suggesting, Attorney Jane?
It may be what I'm suggesting.
Okay, go ahead.
So my only concern with that approach is being that we don't allow people to come in virtually. If you miss a meeting and we get to the voting, if anything happens, it could. So if we have, I understand wanting to get more public comment, but waiting it out could mess things up also. So I think we have to find some kind of compromise in there, because I just don't want to be in a situation where someone's not here on one particular night and that's the night we get to voting. So
Mr. Willis?
Can I just, I'll add to that. I think we're on a very short timeline, but I also know that going back to the controversial item number 5, we are going to be offering at the end of this our recommendation. So that's not to say where if we make a decision, we can't go back, because the final product is really ultimately our recommendation as a committee. So let's say we go through this, just for argument's sake, if we went through the whole process tonight, we voted on all 4 items, the final product is still the report that we're submitting to the commission. So as I understand it, nothing that we do is necessarily final until that report's submitted. So if we were to do something tonight and make a decision, it would essentially be the equivalent of a draft decision that could be subject to change were we to get some public comment that was compelling or overwhelming down the road. So it's not necessarily a decision one way or the other. I'm just saying that's kind of my thought process on that.
Let's go ahead, Beth.
I think it makes me a little uneasy to suggest that if we voted a position, that it's open for interpretation to come back and open back up again. So I understand where you're coming from, Jared, and also with Sharon. I would like to say, we agended 2 topics tonight.
Correct.
I'd like to see us discuss those 2 topics without taking final action tonight to get to Sharon's concern about allowing more public comment. And along those lines, Vice Chairman, how do we deal with, for instance, we got input via email, all of us were copied on input.
Mhm.
Is that considered public comment? Does that get reflected in the records? How does that get handled?
To that point, I would say that anything that you've received to this point, I would not consider part of the public record because it was received unsolicited and I did not have direction from you as a committee. However, I think what I clearly heard you just say a couple moments ago is that you do want to provide that opportunity. You want us to be a conduit to receive that and provide it. So I think with that understanding, I would say that Mr. Alsman, I think, is who you're referring to. There were a couple of emails. We would use that as the first item that probably we've received from the public, but also make that avenue available that you just voted on. So had you not had a discussion, I would not have made it a part of the public record because the committee didn't provide direction, and that would have been akin to a conversation you had with the neighbor across the fence or in the grocery store, but now you've given clear direction and we'll follow that.
Thank you.
Very good.
I think it's a point of order, but, is this, and this is to the administrators, is this meeting available on WebEx or online for people outside of us to participate or to view?
Yeah, so available to view. So this meeting, the public could connect and view this meeting via WebEx. I'm going to look and make sure, but I believe that the way that's done is with the notice of the meeting. It says the meeting will be held in this location at this time, and here's the link if you wish to view it. We did not have anything active that would allow them to participate. We had, our presenters were positioned that way, but yes, this and future, well, that's part of the discussion that the vice chair brought up. We can make that available depending on the location we're in.
So I just wanted to raise it that people are notifying me that they're unable to access that WebEx or it's not working or whatever. So I don't know how we would address that.
You say you have received that?
Someone sent me a message and they're unable to access it.
I don't have an answer for you on that, but let's
Okay.
talk after the meeting. I'll find out who that was, and we'll see whether it was operator error, which would be the case if I were the person, or if it's system problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Derek, you have a comment?
I have 2 actually, just to tack off of that. Is there any way we can just throw this on Facebook somehow? I know it's been done before. I just feel like that's more accessible for most folks than WebEx. I mean, I use Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams. I don't know that I even know how to use WebEx, so just.
I mean, I hate to jump in, but Facebook owns the video that you stream on Facebook, and the city might not be comfortable with Facebook then owning. I work in web video, and there's lots of ownership rules around Facebook and Facebook video. But there are other streaming platforms that are readily available.
My second comment was just to get back to the initial discussion around the structure. I also, I understand, Ms. Corin, what you're saying, and so I do think that we need to provide something for the public to comment on. So if we're having a discussion on item 1, I think it would be productive not to have a final vote, but maybe as a committee, we can decide what we would like to submit to the public for comment, just so that there's a product that they can say, oh, we like this, or we don't like this, or whatever it may be, because if they're just generally commenting on discussion that we're having that maybe they're not even able to access, I'm not sure how productive the actual comment that we're gonna be receiving would be. So I don't know if that allays your concerns, but.
A little bit, and I would have to wonder, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No problem.
I would have to wonder if the minutes don't address that. So if the minutes are capturing the essence of what we're discussing and they're posted publicly, correct? Could that serve as our vehicle to say this was the discussion had, if you have comments to provide?
Attorney James, I'm back. Sorry.
Thank you. So again, I just go back to my initial request to somehow allow for a larger time for deliberation. And I'll say this, contrary to popular belief, I don't have a formed opinion. So I really am eager to hear from the public about all of the items and to give the most time and most opportunity. So I just have some unreadiness about stating what my opinion is based upon just the data that we've received and the few public comments that we've received today. So if there's a way to build into the schedule, maybe even, and this may be something for the chair later, when he returns for us to discuss, a date certain that we will, on whatever the date it is, this is an old schedule, but February 13th is the last day for public comment. We will, on that particular day,
I like that.
something that that gives people a time certain to provide all comment, so that there is no cloud on this commission in terms of our interest or lack of interest in public comment.
Very good.
I was gonna suggest that there's a process. I think other committees are utilizing CRA. For example, they have a deadline for written comments, and so that staff have time to kind of generate and put them in our agenda. We can read them before we show up. These are all publicly noticed meetings, so if we can actually open up potentially an email account or have a public comment at Talgal, some sort of email, and have a cutoff date and just get the written comments there for those folks who won't, because if they can see the agenda items, they can go ahead and voice their opinions, and we can actually have them prior to meeting, and we can discuss it. I mean, CRA, Citizens Advisory Committees work that way, so.
Okay, we've heard varied comments. I will certainly entertain a motion from any of you that we can vote on and actually move forward that would encompass the discussion of all of our committee members. Yes.
So I'd like to make a motion that, kind of what Attorney James was saying, we have our deliberation. I think that once the deliberation is done on the item, I would like to see a vote on when we feel like we will be ready to have a final vote on the item. I like the idea of having a time certain. I think as a committee, we'll be able to, once we have a discussion, decide, okay, we'll be ready to vote on this in 2 weeks, or maybe we need more time because we're so far apart on it. But I'd like to, so the motion is, we have our deliberation. When the item's on the agenda, we set a time certain at the end of that deliberation for the vote on that item at the end of that.
Is there a second?
I'll second that so we can discuss it.
Ready for discussion?
Could we perhaps consider, instead of having a vote at the end of our discussion, we'll call it a poll, and just poll the members of what their current position is without committing to a vote?
Kind of like, are we ready to vote?
I'm sorry?
No. Polling.
I'm open to that.
Did you say you were open to that?
Yeah.
This is a question, and going back to Robert's rules, is there a way for us to have discussion but not move to vote until the next meeting? So that we're in line with, I don't know if that's.
I'll defer
Okay.
to.
Can you ask, I'm not,
Meaning
I'm
that,
a little
can we,
confused.
can we have discussion but not vote
Yes,
on an issue until a subsequent meeting?
yes.
So we can.
Yes, you can deliberate and vote at a later meeting, and you can also, the Florida law is that before a vote is taken, there has to be public comment allowed, but it doesn't have to be at the same meeting.
So my question is how would that look? Would it just be simply us not making the motion to proceed with a vote? Or, because if someone makes that, we would have to defeat that motion in order to not hold the vote then, correct?
But I think Mr. Payne was saying we could do a straw poll, which is not a binding vote, correct?
I'm not aware that we've,
I don't know, that would be something, if you're referencing, Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah,
I don't have it memorized, but I don't recognize that as an action that you would take. If I may, I'll add the comment that I think, I may be wrong, but if you deliberate on an item for very long, most everyone paying attention
Amen.
will have a good feeling for what you're thinking. I think you've got a deliberative body that is going to be open and clear. You've already said you're not going to vote on it till a subsequent meeting anyway. I could be wrong about that, but I know that at the last meeting, there was discussion of public input process and that sort of thing. And here we have a dozen people in the audience, including several members of the media. So I think there is an iterative process that begins, and I think you'll get that public input in writing that you don't have yet, and that may, I think in the course of a week, you'll have a clearer picture of what kind of even public input you might get, but that's just my thought.
Good.
I'll withdraw my motion, just so we can kind of get into the discussion. I think we're spending a lot of time on this issue, and I think we should
Yes.
just go ahead and move forward.
But I think the issue was brought up, though, by Attorney James initially. So are you withdrawing your?
The motion I made.
The motion you made that, does anyone else then want to offer a motion regarding what we just discussed?
I'll withdraw my second, but,
Okay.
and again, this will go back to Robert's rules. If we are just having a discussion that says we're going to discuss the two items that were agenda noticed tonight, and at the end of our deliberations tonight, we will suggest a date at which no sooner than that date, I'm sorry, no,
Later.
yeah, thank you, it's been a long day. That we will suggest when we believe we will be ready to vote, so that that can be communicated publicly for
Yes.
public comment. Do we need a motion to actually do that, or is that just, we're laying our own ground rules?
I believe that's the prerogative of the committee, I think.
And I think that's what I heard everybody was comfortable with. We would discuss the two agended items tonight, and we would communicate a date at which we anticipate being ready to take a vote, so that the public is aware.
Of when the vote would be taken.
Okay.
Is everyone comfortable with it?
I'm comfortable with that, assuming that that's how we proceed. I raised the issue because I thought at the end of the meeting that we had said that we were going to vote at the next meeting. Like we were going to take up two, vote, take up two and vote. And if that's not the case, then I'm fine.
Okay. All right. You had your hand up.
I think
You're
we've covered
good?
everything, yeah.
Madam
Alright.
Chair, just in quick research, and I'm sorry I didn't know that answer right off the top of my head, but I believe straw polls are not permitted under Robert's rules. So just as an aside.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we're there. At least in what we're going to do. So let's start, a lot of information has been provided, and I don't want us just to arbitrarily move past it without some discussion. Remembering that our first issue deals with the composition. We currently have 5. It was very interesting reading, at least for me. We went from 1826 from 7 to 9 to 3 to 5. Y'all recognize that? Who it is? Oh my. So, and here we are in 2024, since 1950, I think I read, at 5, with very different dynamics. So why don't we just open this up for discussion? All of you, I hope, have read. I would like to have the treasurer clerk or someone talk to us about the survey. I thought the survey data was very interesting. I had several questions at the end of my reading. So if you all don't mind, we can get at least an update on this survey data. And then I'll just open it up so that we can have discussion about this issue number 1.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. The survey information was something that you requested at the last meeting. We distributed that to you. There were 2 pieces of information. One, there was a time from when the poll was opened until the deadline for that information to be brought to the city commission, and that was what the city commission had for them as they made a decision. The second piece of information is the fact that that poll was up on TalGov and wasn't taken down immediately. So even after the commission received that initial feedback, it continued to be open, so additional responses were received. And so we provided you both of those pieces. My observation on that is that the responses in the first batch generated virtually the same results as the responses in the second batch. So over that period of time, so a number of 38 or whatever it might have been ended up being doubled that in that whole period. Obviously, half of that came after the commission had taken action, but I didn't see anything that would change the direction that the commission saw or received and then gave to you.
Very good. Any questions from any of you regarding the survey data? All right, then let's just open it up for comment regarding this item number 1. I would just go around to everyone, but I'm just gonna open it up first. Okay, go ahead, Ernie.
Okay, the thing that struck me, as was noted, the Treasurer Clerk's office provided us with a lot of information, a lot of data, and we were gifted with John Osmond's opinions as well, out of different sorts of data, different sorts of numbers. As we all know, you can make numbers say anything. One of the things that concerns me most is the idea that population is the magic factor. And I think there are a lot of other factors that go into the makeup of a city commission. There was a variety of types. There were 2 consolidated governments that John Osmond listed, and they each had a membership of 10. One of the things that I didn't see in all the comparisons of all the cities was something that is, if not unique, unusual about Tallahassee, in that it being one of few cities that is the only incorporated city within the county that is not a consolidated government. And there are very few like that I've seen. In fact, I'm having a hard time locating any others. But when you think about it, Tallahassee does have a quasi-consolidated government for the specific purpose of distributing sales tax funds. Talking, of course, about the Blueprint Intergovernmental Agency. Now, that quasi-consolidated government has 12 members. And one thing that I have noticed, we all come from a variety of backgrounds and different experiences. One thing about my own background, my viewpoint, is that I probably have a lot more time on my hands than most of the rest of you. Thanks especially to Elaine Bryant, who processed my retirement papers several years ago. I've been retired for several years. I don't play golf. What I do is I go to local government meetings. I go to just about every city commission meeting, most Blueprint meetings, a lot of county commission meetings. And what I've seen is, to generalize, the larger the governmental body is, the less efficient it works. And to take it to the extreme with the Blueprint Intergovernmental Agency, with 12 members, we're dealing with just a reality, 12 politicians that generally have a lot to say, and they should, because they're speaking to their constituents. Takes a lot of time, simply the logistics of the meeting, for everybody to have their say. You have a particular controversial agenda item, then you've got 50 or 60 public speakers or more, I've seen, each with their 3 minutes to speak. So I've seen several meetings run 11, 12, or later at night. And what you see when you're actually at the meeting, and you don't see on the cameras, is that you've got a a board of policymakers, they're frankly exhausted at the end of that meeting, and it's only then when they have to vote and make a decision. You look around the room, you see people getting up out of their seats, wandering around just to get their blood circulating and so that they can think clearly. I've heard commissioners actually say that it's so late, it's hard for me to focus. I've seen commissioners get up and just leave the meeting. I've seen meeting or votes called for prematurely before everybody had their say, all for the purpose of getting this over with. And you see that especially with Blueprint, with their 12 members. One thing that we all need to consider is if we're considering the expansion of the city commission, that by the current intergovernmental agreement will expand the size of the intergovernmental agency. So then you've got more than 12 members taking their time and going through that whole process. And basically the point is it's a less efficient government. I've heard that the Jacksonville City Commission meetings are just totally out of control with I think they're 19 members or something like that. And it's crazy. A lot of people say that the city commission a lot doesn't get done for political reasons. But in terms of just the basic efficiency of the meetings, it works a lot better than Blueprint, and it works somewhat better than the county commission. I've seen county commissioners go on past midnight for the same sorts of reasons. So that's a big reason that I am opposed to expanding the size of the city commission simply by the logistics of conducting meetings. And I haven't been able to find any positive reason that would offset that.
Thank you, sir. Who wants to speak next?
I'll just make a couple of observations. Like Sharon, I did not come with preconceived notions about what we should or shouldn't do. Unlike Mr. Payne, I'm not focused on the length of a meeting, I'm focused on the responsibilities of the commission. And when we look at the responsibilities of this commission, whether it's the additional CRA, whether it's Blueprint, the fact that we're only one of, I think she mentioned there were 2 other municipalities that have their own electrical, that they're, I mean, that makes us different than others. And so while I don't think population like you is the sole driver, I do think we have to acknowledge the size and complexity that Tallahassee has become and assure that we have got representative government to cover both physical size of Tallahassee as well as population size, and then the responsibilities within the commission.
Thank you, Beth. Other members? Jarrett, what do you think?
I'm not sure that length of meeting is something I'm terribly concerned about, but I think the utility piece is important. I think the utility piece is probably a driver of our overall budget. So I know we're over $1 billion budget. And so for me, population is compelling. I mean, I was looking at the numbers here. I mean, we're almost 10x what we were back when we went to 5. I don't think that's everything. I agree with you, Ernie. For me, I think the number that I keep coming back to is the budget number, and it's, you know, do we, in conjunction with the population, do we have enough folks making decisions about this very large pot of money, how it's being used, the complexity of the public utility, in combination with serving the community and the various constituent needs that they have. And so for me, that's what's on my mind as I'm thinking about how many seats we need to have. I don't know what the right answer is. I mean, heck, if we're trying to lower meeting time, we might as well just cut it down. I mean, but I think realistically, if we're looking at how many people are representing the population, I agree, we need to take in the totality of what that looks like. But for me, I think the bigger number that I'm thinking about is the budget.
I think you made some great points there, Jerry. I'm thinking, expanding the commission isn't gonna, I'm trying to think, that doesn't improve budget management. I don't think there's any, equivalency between the two, that if we had 7 or 9, or if we went to 19 like Jacksonville, what would be the benefit there? Will we still end up with the same, difficulty making decisions in commission meetings? I think it would expand how much we have, if we're also gonna talk about paying the commissioners also, then that also is gonna impact the budget. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration, but ultimately, when I think about making a change to the charter or to any policy, is there an injustice? Is the system not working? So unless we're saying that our 5-member commission is not working, then we need some kind of compelling reason, or we would need the public to come and say, we want to change this, but I haven't seen that yet. So that's what I'm looking for, and I haven't seen a compelling rationale for us to make this change at this point. That's why.
I was also thinking of the budget, but in the same way you were, that it involves compensating more people, more aides, there will be more members, and if you change the next section as well, that involves committee compensation, that would change. And even in this section of the financial considerations that we received, it mentioned that we don't know how much it would cost, in part because we would have to outfit City Hall with new spaces, we'd have to re-outfit the room they meet in, and I can tell you those things run into the millions when you begin doing like alterations to major city buildings. And I think that's something we should also maybe take into consideration. It would be a costly change for the city, perhaps.
I have more questions than.
Oh, what are some of your questions?
But for me, what I'm focused on is whether or not, with this being a representative government, whether the 5 or 7 or 9 or God forbid 19 adequately provide sufficient representation to the citizens. And so that's the overarching question that I'm looking to answer. So it's not budget for me, it's not, I mean, that's a factor. Budget is a factor, population is a factor. But ultimately, given the community as a whole, whether the number we have now or additional numbers best provide the type of service and representation that the voters and the residents deserve.
Very good. Any other comments?
A comment on the representation from what I've witnessed. Historically, for one thing, there seems to be a pretty good balance in the 5-member commission. It's changed obviously over the years, but there is even in the current commission, a broad spectrum of socioeconomically, racially, geographically, the commissioners are spread out in all those fields right now. That's just the current commission. I've seen it in previous commissions as well, fairly balanced as it goes. As far as the constituents, from what I've seen, when people bring up issues at committees, say on agenda items, quite often if it's an issue that the commissioners have not seen, they will listen and not to bring up districts right now, but they're paying attention regardless. There are no districts, so they're all their constituents. They all potentially voted for or against them. When things are brought up, every one of the commissioners I've seen send, even in the middle of the meeting, sends their aide around to get more information from that particular person that has a concern, getting their names and contact information and all that, and they designate a staff member to follow up on that. So I don't think anything's fallen down there. The 5-member commission is doing their job, from what I've seen.
Okay, let's pause and hear from the public if everyone has voiced their concerns. anyone from the public would like to speak on this issue?
Let's begin. I would like to reiterate the points that I was making specifically about this policy. When we talk about representation, you want to stick around? When we talk about representation, it's not just how many people are in a district. It starts before that. We know the impact of money in politics. We know this. And we know who cuts the checks in this town. We know that when you've got a pie, let's say there's a pie of 5 slices, and the community, the grassroots community who is so often silenced by people who've got more money than them, that pie, each slice is gonna get smaller the more seats you add, while the people who own developer companies, that own big businesses, that are, of the Florida Chamber, they can continue to cut checks, whether it's 5 candidates, 15 candidates, 21 candidates, doesn't matter. The only limiting factor for them and their piles of money is they can only give $1,000 a time from each LLC that they own. So if they own 5 LLCs, they can scoot around campaign finance law and give $5,000, $10,000. The only limit is how many LLCs they own. And that just is so corrosive and rotten to the core. It chips away at our democracy, and it ruins the integrity, and it makes people say, why do I even care? Why even get involved? So often I'm hearing people saying, why don't younger people care about stuff like this? Where's their civic pride? Why don't they participate? It's because of this conversation right here. This conversation right here is why they don't participate. Because we're tiptoeing around the influence of money in politics, and I haven't seen that discussed by this board yet, and I think that must be considered. It must be considered that when you add races, all it's gonna do is get more maxed out contributions from people who are seeking favors from the government, seeking appointments from the government, seeking millions of dollars in subsidies from the government. That all it will do is provide a microphone to those people while squashing those people who just want a city they can be proud of. Thank you for the indulgence.
Thank you. Anyone else?
What's my address again? No. I'm Stanley Sims at 1320 Avondale Way. And Miss Beth, I'm not right where you are, but I'm not far from you. And why I'm saying that is, I want this charter to give me a government that's efficient. I don't care if they got to sit here at 3 o'clock in the morning if they're doing their job. I don't care if it's efficient. I want a charter that will give me a rules and order that if I elect someone that is not professional, ethical, that this charter will bring them in line. Let me give you an example. I want a charter that will be fair to every commissioner so that I can not only be heard, but they can also be heard for me in my district. Let me give you an example of this, and I don't want to do this because, Madam Vice Chair, you have set a tone in this room that I am very blessed to be a part of, okay? And so, but here's an example, so take this in love. We currently now have a city commissioner that has not been a mayor pro tem. Not that she don't want to be, but because of our current structure. And I'm not saying, Miss Jane, that's something that's pushing me to go get 2 more no, you understand? But that is a concern to me that I'm so tired of these 3-2 votes. You understand? And so I want to get us there. And I'm like you, Miss Jane, I didn't come with an agenda, but I am coming with some set outcomes. I don't care if I got to sit there at 3 o'clock in the morning. But if I can walk away from that meeting and say, okay, I didn't win this time, but I won last time. But it's getting so warped here that my representation ain't being heard. That's where we are. let me speak for Stan. That's where I am. So I'm asking you, smart people, and thank you for your service. If you can give me a government that works, I don't want to win every time, because shouldn't win every time. That's not democracy. But I shouldn't be dogged. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Christella Sestanga, 308 North Bellevue Drive. I don't come here often to speak, and some of you know who I am, but it doesn't matter who I am. But you know, I came rushing in here from out of town. I've been traveling all week because I care about Tallahassee. I love Tallahassee. I care about this community very, very, very much. It's the reason why I moved here, left, and then came back. And I'm staying here. And so this actually really matters to me. I think the point that I want to highlight regarding this specific topic is the fact that we have seen time again, and this is a fact, it's not politically, it's a fact. Time and time again, people come to the city commission and say, we want this, we want this, we want this. And the city commission says no. And they go against the people every single time. I worked within the commission. I worked in the Capitol before for a state rep. I've lived in Jacksonville for 5 years, dealt with politics there. I lived in Orlando and St. Pete, Broward, Miami. I have never seen anything so toxic as the dysfunction in this, and we're across the Capitol, but this is the most toxic place I have ever worked in. And it sucks, not for me. I have the luxury to, if I'm still trying to get on the WebEx, by the way. If I can't get into the WebEx, I can drive here. I have that luxury. So it doesn't suck for me as much, but it sucks for our communities. And nobody asked for this, but we're doing this. But nobody has asked for this. Please, just do what the people want. It's not that hard.
Thank you. Could you give us your address, please?
308 North Bellevue Drive.
All right, very good. No other comments from the public? Any other comments? Okay, we are now at 7:34. So let's move to issue 2. If we might, I will actually just read this first, and then we will engage comment regarding issue number 2. Each member of the city commission, except for the mayor of the city of Tallahassee, shall be paid an annual salary equal to 1/2 of the annual salary set by state law for members of the Board of County Commissioners of Leon County, Florida. The mayor shall be paid an annual salary which shall be set by ordinance after public hearing, and an amount which shall not be less than 1/2 nor more than the annual salary set by state law for members of the Board of County Commissioners of Leon County, Florida. The mayor shall be paid an annual salary which shall be the same as that set by state law for the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners of Leon County, Florida. Okay, let's open up the discussion as we did before. I think we asked for input regarding this particular issue first from the public, then we'll have our deliberation, and we'll close out with actual comments from the public. Anyone would like to speak on this issue?
Margaret Moore, 1910 Monticello Drive. I do feel like the non-mayor commissioners deserve a raise. They certainly should. I think just everyone should just get what the mayor's getting. I know he also has a rather large budget with a very large staff, and I would like to see the other commissioners be able to have a staff to be able to interact with our community in such a broad scope. It's very hard, obviously, for one person to be everywhere and do everything, and having staff helps a lot. There was an issue where they had a great intern system and that was being used, but it got shut down because they didn't feel like Well, you know, particularly one commissioner was utilizing the intern program too heavily because they had a lot of work to do. That's my main thing. I don't think the mayor deserves that. I mean, he's a weak mayor. I don't know why he has the staff he has and the budget and the salary that he does have, considering he's not like the mayor, the strong mayor. So, I say either bring him down or bring everyone else up. And, you know, they do deserve compensation. And I've heard certain commissioners complain far too often that they do not take their salary to work this hard. And I want commissioners who want to work, regardless of the pay. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then let's start our deliberations and discussions on city commission salaries. Who wants to start this discussion? Go ahead.
I have a question for the attorney, and this is just concerning when should someone recuse themselves from voting, or what is the process for recusal if someone had a conflict of interest on this decision?
Well, the conflict of interest is if it's something that inures to the voter's special interest. So it's very fact specific.
I only raise that because anything that we do as a body, considering that I just don't want it to be marred with anyone else's external issues with city commissioners. So I'm concerned about how that might look in the public if we're making decisions here as a group and then someone has a personal or a public issue stretch that's being kind of played out in the ethics board with the city commissioner. So I don't know how we will move with that.
I'm having a little bit of a hard time following you, but I don't think that's a voting conflict, if I'm hearing you.
Okay, let's move on to the issue of the salaries.
Madam Vice Chair, a couple of questions, and maybe these are directed to city staff, but I'm trying to get a sense of what type of load, obviously commission meetings and things like that, but what is the expectation of time spent by our commissioners? Because I was always under the impression it's a part-time position. Perhaps it is morphed into more. Can you give some color around that?
Probably not to your satisfaction, but I'll at least start. Your characterization there of, your sense was that it was part-time. That was part of the discussion that led to this specific item of, should it be considered part-time or full-time? I think there have been any number of commissioners who would tell you that it's full-time, or at least the demands are full-time. I'm obviously not there with them every step through their day, so I couldn't speak very well to exactly what the demand is. I will say that I'm aware of at least one or two instances where maybe there was a commissioner who did have a job or a small business of their own, and after they were elected, either put that on hold or ceased operating in that way so that they could devote themselves to the position. I think some of that is simply, particularly in today's world, you're always on the job. I've made the comment about over the fence or at the grocery store. I do think there are formal steps of city commission meeting, CRA meeting, blueprint meeting, preparation for saying meeting with staff, meeting with constituents, and then I think there are other less formal things that are demands on time. I won't say who, but I know at least one person here has served in that capacity and might have comment.
Okay, so we'll, yes.
Sorry, one more question, because that brought up something in one of the comments references. Is there a rationale for why the mayor has a higher pay than the rest of the commissioners? Is that mayors have more responsibilities based off our system? Is there something about the mayor's office that requires more pay? If anyone could explain that.
That might be a historical question.
and Matt may, and Mr. Lutz may have even better detail, but I think the timing of that change was such that that coincided with the move to make the mayor a directly elected position. And so I think the thought was that the directly elected mayor would have some additional level of responsibility, probably primarily in representing the city. We recently had JetBlue as a new carrier through the Tallahassee International Airport. There's the recognition, the welcoming, some of the discussions. Most of that is done with staff. We have, that's what the city manager does, is he directs the airport, but at the same time, there may be opportunities or needs for elected officials to be involved, and probably the mayor is the person most out front there. But I don't think there's an enumerated list that would say, city commissioners do these 6 things, and the mayor does those 6 plus these 3. It's more a feel or sense.
So I do have some thoughts around this. I think based on the information that we've been provided and the public comment and, even to a certain degree, lack of public comment, that we should consider an increase. And my thought is around a couple things. One is the demands on the job, the fact that although one may assume it's part-time, it appears, and from my personal experience with commissioners, that it is very time-consuming in terms of the number of hours that they put into the job. Also, in looking at the equity with the county in terms of workload and salary, I think that warrants an increase. The size of the budget, and again, inequitably looking at the size of the county budget versus the city budget, that was a factor in my thinking. And then the last one is just based upon, my 20-plus years in Tallahassee. I think that the salary is currently set so low and compared to other elected offices that it is more difficult to get passionate and qualified people, citizens, to run for the city versus some of the other elected seats. And so if we make the pay more equitable, I think that that may help. It may help encourage more people who are really passionate about our city. So those are my thoughts.
I was going to bring up some of the issues that Ms. James did, the equity of the county especially. If the charter is determining the city commissioner's salary based on the county commissioner, yeah, it's a very real difference with a city having, I think, 3 times the budget of the county, something like that. So that's very real. As far as comparing with the mayor has a few extra duties. His signature goes on all the legal forms. He is the figurehead before, he's the image of the city, and there's some value to that. But I think the city commissioner, he obviously has the same number of votes as any other commissioner. So there should be more equity in the commission itself, the city commission. I would say a more reasonable, if we're going to the percentage of county commission salaries, something more along 80 to 90%, whereas the mayor makes 100% of the county commission.
Any other comments? Yes.
So when I'm looking at this, I kind of just hate how it's worded in the charter. I think it's wonky. I think it's not a great way to do it. But without necessarily commenting on it, I understand if we're going to compare, which we are, by the language, we're comparing the county to the city. I mean, if we're going to compare the duties, I think you can just go back to the budget size. I mean, it's a very different set of requirements. But I kind of come back to, I'm not convinced that the charter is the best place to do this. And the reason I'm not convinced is because, and we're going to talk about this at another juncture, there's no requirement right now to come back to the charter at any point. maybe we fix that, maybe we put in place a process where we have to do it on a regular basis, but whether it's 5, 10, 20 years, there's a lot that can happen to the cost of living over that amount of time. And so I'm not sure that the charter is the best place to set salaries. I mean, I think in some ways it would be equivalent to setting the salary of a House member in the Constitution. And so so I'm kind of thinking about, is there another way to do this? I know that there are governing bodies that have separate independent entities that review periodically, similar to what we're doing here, but the function is more focused. And I think the other benefit of that is, I mean, I think we've talked about the requirement for somebody who's elected, the things that they have to do, the things that they have to balance if they're part-time, their ability to represent their constituents well. So when we look at those requirements, I think in a lot of ways, the average voter that goes to vote on something like this is just saying, oh, these politicians, I'm not gonna give them a raise, right? And so I think there's a political element to it too, where in some ways, you're putting folks that are serving the community in a position of having to ask the voter, and I'm not sure that, I'm trying to word this right. I'm concerned about the understanding of public service and how it relates to salaries and how it gets conflated with my taxes and so I think on this issue, when it comes to salary, again, I'm gonna go back to, I'm not sure I'm convinced that the charter is the best place to do it. And I don't know if there's an alternative. I'd be interested to see if there are some best practices around this that don't, because the other thing you don't want to do is have the fox guarding the hen house. I mean, I think it's an inherent conflict of interest to ask the commission to set their own salary. And so those are some of the things I'm thinking about. This is something that I'm very conflicted about. But I know that I'm not setting any sort of direction, but those are the things that I'm weighing as I'm looking at this issue.
Very good. You have a comment?
As I understand it, the commission is not setting their own salary. The way the charter reads, it's based on county commission. And as I understand that, that was news to me, that the legislature sets the county commission salary. Do you know, does anybody know if there is any kind of cost of living increase that the legislature?
It changes with population.
But only by that, or is there a cost of living
Yeah,
adjustment?
just population, unless they go in and write a new statute. The statute that currently exists is related to population alone.
Okay.
And it would take them rewriting that statute.
Okay. So in either case, it's not the city commission setting the salary. They're just setting the outline of, we will follow this formula. So I don't see that's a conflict there.
Yeah, can I clarify? So there's a piece of this where the commission by ordinance sets the mayor's salary. And I meant that comment more towards, if we're going to find other ways to do it, I would be equally as uncomfortable putting, so as we're talking about parity between the mayor and the commission, I'm not sure that I would want to see, I don't think the commission frankly should be in charge of setting the mayor's salary either. It was not focused on our current environment. It was more focused on, I wanted to set my intent. I wouldn't want to go that direction either, if that makes sense.
You want to put a question?
I was just gonna add one quick comment to Mr. Payne's thought. So, yes, it's set by state statute, and it doesn't necessarily change, but because Tallahassee has slowly and steadily grown, I mean, I've said that 1,000 times to rating agencies when we're gonna borrow money, that you don't see peaks and valleys in our population, but you do see slow and steady growth. So there have been increases over time. If you just looked at the numbers, you might say, there must be a 2% CPI or something, and it's not that, it's just that our population has gotten us there. So there have been some changes since that was put into place. And the other quick comment for Mr. Willis is that that ordinance was put in, at the time the mayor was elected, that was changed and that was set. There has been no action or ordinance change since it was originally implemented, but I understand your point.
Mr. Brewer?
Well, I guess Jim just answered it.
You did, okay.
So, I guess I'm just trying to clarify, our recommendation would be situated around adjusting the language here to what we see in the current charter, to say, the commissioners will be, their paid annual salary set to equal to 1/2 or 3/4 or equal to the annual salary set by state law for the county commission. So it will be still capped at what the state law for the Board of County Commissioners was. Am I understanding that correctly?
That, we provided that information because that's the current, current comparison, but that's not a.
We're not required.
You're not limited
Okay.
to that.
Question, are we expected to provide policy direction or, language? I'm interested in language, and I think Jared seems to be interested in language, but is the direction that we would give the commission policy direction, recommendations, or are we at liberty to suggest language? Language. Okay, one follow-up to that.
Yes.
If we were to recommend that the salaries be taken out of the charter, and I'm just piggybacking on Jared's line of discussion, would that, so the recommendation would be essentially to repeal section 340, or replace, so basically, I'm just thinking in how it would be in operation.
Right.
What would happen?
I can provide some clarification on my thoughts on that. I mean, the way I would envision it, obviously, I think if you were to just strike that out and put something new, then, well, what do we pay them? So the way I would envision this taking place is putting a piece in there that basically says, this is the direction we want to go, this is the council, commission, board, however you want to look at it, and again, this is just, I'm on the fly here, I'm just talking through kind of the way I'm thinking about it. I think you would want to have some sort of transitionary language so that you're not just kind of flipping a switch the day after the election, provided the initiative passes, and now we're in this kind of no man's land until the board's in place. That's kind of how I would envision something like that looking. Again, this is this is the item that I probably, it's not that I haven't thought through, it's just it's the one that I'm just the most kind of up in the air on, just because it's the one that I think I'm probably the most uncomfortable with.
I would have to say my only concern with something like a board is then we have to choose the people who sit on the board. Who chooses those people? Is it the city commissioners?
Right.
Are they choosing the people who are gonna choose their pay? Like, we have to figure out how that board is made up, and that is complicated in its own respect. I think the nice thing about the county commission pay is that it already almost has like a structured pay increases, like population increases, that increases. So, unless Tallahassee went through some sort of devastating thing and lost half the population, that should steadily increase as it has over time, and their pay should keep up with some sort of cost of living increase.
All right.
One more thought as we talk about this, and I'm a little where Jared is, but are we conflating an elected role with a full-time job? Because we're talking about it like it's someone's vocation, and at the end of the day, we have some commissioners who choose to focus solely on their commission seat. We have some who have outside employment, and this is what they do to serve the community. And I just think we want to be real clear,
Right.
what is the compensation for?
Right.
Is it for, are we trying to create a living wage for a commissioner? Or are we trying to compensate for the time we expect a commissioner to represent their constituency? And that's all I would say.
Very good.
I guess the question is, do we have a provision in charter that defines whether these commissioners are part-time or full-time?
That language or distinction is not.
That gets back to what you were saying, we don't have a defined job description, so.
Where does that exist then? We talked a lot about it being a part-time position. Is that defined, or it's?
No, I don't think that's defined. I think some of the discussion among the commission even getting to this item was exactly that. I think the thought was that with the salary set as half of a county commission salary, that probably indicates if one is a full-time, then the other one must be a part-time if the salary is half. I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth, but that was just a sense that I got. And I think there is that discussion at any given point in time of the nature of the work versus the compensation, and what is it seeking to address, and what are the demands of the job. I think somebody asked that question earlier.
Yeah, just quick, are the county commissioners then considered full-time? I know this is city staff, but like, do we consider them as full-time employees?
No.
No, or are they in that same kind of operational, they can have other things they're doing, they have other places they could be spending their time?
I
Like, how
don't
much
know
time
what
are
their
they-
charter says specifically.
Okay.
It doesn't keep them from having
Other things,
employment.
okay, so they're in the kind of same boat then, ish, with different responsibilities.
Not quite. I think that, well, the county commission, it'd be great if you could actually
Sure.
get us the actual
I'll do it.
details.
Yes.
But they consider themselves as full-time employees.
Okay.
And they're just like any other employee, state, city, county, where you can have dual employment. So they may have another job working with, in conjunction with their full-time job. But let's go ahead and get some definitive details regarding that. We're gonna get to public comment.
All right.
I guess I do want to ask Mr. Willis for clarification on your
Good luck.
your intention to not have this decided in the charter. I don't. How would that be? How would it be possible to not have it? Because even if we decided that we wanted to change that language, that would have to still be an amendment that would go through
Yeah.
a referendum.
So the way I understand our task as it relates to item number 2 is that we are being asked to examine the section of the charter that deals with city commission salaries.
Okay.
And so, let me be clear, it's not my intent. I don't want to use that word because I'm not even at intent at this point. But my understanding of the task we've been given is that this section is something that we can work with. And so whether it's putting a number, whether it's changing some wording so that we're back at, parity with the county, regardless of what we do, my understanding is we have purview over the way this section deals with the salary. And so as I was thinking about what we might do there, I don't love the idea that and I could probably be a little clearer. I don't like the idea that we're defining a number, whether it's comparing it to another number that's based off of another number that some other body set. I don't like the idea that we're setting a number here. I don't think doing it by statute is the best way to do it. To your point, I don't think population is the best measure of what a community requires of their elected officials. I don't think a comparison to the Board of County Commissioners properly reflects what our city commission is required to do, because in a lot of ways it's apples and oranges. What I think is, I think every community is different. I think Tallahassee is very, very different from all the other communities that we have on these lists. And so I feel like there should be a process that takes the conflict of interest out of it, that allows for adjustment for people that are serving the public so that they can live to a standard of living that makes sense, that reflects what the community looks like and the unique needs that we have here. So I don't know the answer to that. That's kind of the direction I'm going towards.
Thank you.
Do you mind asking the league for more specific best practices. They gave us the numbers, but I would be curious, maybe Lynn would have exactly how some of the other sample cities actually, the verbiage, how they handle it,
Have they
whether it's
developed the
in
number?
charter or, yeah, I think that would be helpful in moving out this conversation.
And I'll just add on to that, I know that other states, not that it's the same thing, other states have processes where they set their legislative salaries. And so, you know, I don't know how far up the chain we wanna go, I think that there may be some concepts out there that make more sense than doing it this way, so.
All right, any other comments? I think we've discussed that. All right, let's go to the public.
Good afternoon, and again, I think on this particular, Adner Marceline, 122 South Calhoun. I think on this issue, I do agree a little bit with Mr. Willis. One thing that I say is I think we have to come to a point where we have to find out whether the expectation of this is to be a full-time job. My issue isn't with commissioners asking for more pay. It's the expectation, and the comments that I hear from the public is, what is that expectation with that full pay? If you do full-time work, then I am in favor of you getting full-time pay. But if your pay is part-time and you're asking someone to do full-time work, then that presents an issue. I can only speak for my corporation, it's North Carolina based at our credit union, but we do an annual compensation review. There's a HR benefits person that's separate from the company, but she goes out, she studies the community, she knows the cost of living in each of the areas where we have branches for our credit unions, and she comes back and before she gives it to myself as a senior management to make salary adjustments for my staff, I have all the data in front of me and I base it on that. But there's two different compensation schedules. There's a cost of living adjustment, which is made by one department, and then the second adjustment is like merit and if you're, you know, deserving it and if that's there. And I do think that we have commissioners that serve in both parts. Some serve as full-time job for them, and others it's a part-time job. I would be in favor of just seeing that if it is asking for salaries, I also think about the employees that also work here too, that have to live, and I know how difficult it is sometimes to even get a raise sometimes. My thoughts go with them when we're doing, and we're just increasing someone's salary, make sure that, you know, in the process, it should be comparative in some sort to the institution, and that's all city employees. When we're looking at this process, I think that we kind of leave a sore eye in the community when you see, you know, city officials getting high salaries, and then you have some at the very, very bottom that can't even make, you know, $15 an hour. What I'm saying that I think that we need to give this great thought. It's not something that should be rushed, but I do think that we need to bring in some sort of data and metrics and cost of living analysis inside of it as well. But those are my comments. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'm still over there on 1320 Avondale. Here are my thoughts. I think we need a metric, a system. And I think we shouldn't try to build this around a person. I think that Jared, I think that, and I hope you don't mind me saying Jared, I think that the language should be written in the ordinance, not in the charter. And I think that consulting team every 4 years, going back to what Ms. Joyner said, somewhere in that cycle, if it's on or off, should do an analysis. And I do think that you're right. I think population is the wrong measurement part, because we're a municipality that has utilities. We're a municipality that has an airport. We're a municipality that, what's that other stuff? We got some other stuff too. But in other words, so we locked and loaded. So we can't afford it. And I also don't, and another point that Mr. Jarrett brought up too is, I don't want them county them city commissioners getting a raise, and my wife ain't getting no raise over there with Amy. That ain't gonna look good. So we gotta look at also the setting and the environments that we're setting, that if we're not giving city employees a raise, but these commissioners may be automatically doing so. So you're you're right, it's about the language, you know, and I think that that language needs to be in our ordinance, because the ordinance will give us clarity of how it's done and how we transfer over. And so, the more from listening to you all, I see the salaries doubling. I really do. Because those guys over there, they have more geographical space, but they don't have more workload. And I know Mallow tired of me calling him at 2 in the morning or 3. I don't see part-time. I don't see part-time. That wasn't on his job schedule to run over there to them trees that he probably got 30,000 calls from. But then we also look at the fact too is, and I don't know how to say this nicely, so pray for me. I've been doing good, haven't I, Miss Lynn? Well, some of them got some good cushion jobs. Some of them work for the Leon County School Board. You know, I'm seeing them out there picking up no children or putting them on no bus, but they got a good job. Then we got some that got some other little good jobs too. So I'm just saying, there's a way. So I'm just thinking that as we look at this here, I'm not opposing to giving a man his due, because there is some high dollar issues here for our commissioners to deal with. But I think that based on listening to Mr. Jared, I learned something from Jared tonight, Lord. That needs to be in an ordinance, and that a consultant will come on that 2 or that 3, 4 year period, that it's a bias, it's not them giving themselves a raise, and that consultant will make the argument. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Margaret Moore, 1910 Monticello Drive. Kind of to piggyback, I'm sitting here and I'm realizing maybe my initial jump was, too rash. And there are a lot of things to consider, obviously, that I'm hearing, and you're right. And I think we're actually in a really lucky place, though, because there's only 5 of them. And you could go pretty individualistically, depending on the financial disclosure reports. They're posted every year. Like you were saying, Mayor Daley's got JDA Strategies. He's got one client, Florida League of Cities. They pay him $96,000 a year. Maybe he doesn't need the raise. Let's see, who else? Yeah, there's the school board, there's another consultant, and the pizza guy. So maybe we can take those kind of things into consideration. What is the level of involvement in the community already? How much are they interacting? You can really follow them around for the day, and give them what they deserve, rather than what this pat number is going to come out to be. I don't know if you could individualize it somehow more. So I think it's good, and I still. Sorry.
Okay, before you speak, sir, is there anyone else who has not spoken tonight that would like to weigh in on this issue? Anyone else? Okay.
Stuck with me.
It sounds like you're gonna have the final comment from the.
I just wanted to say that I do think that a good community leader is a full-time position, and I think that looking at the way our city commission is broken out, there's only one person on the city commission who's not a homeowner. And I think in this time where housing affordability is probably first thing on folks' minds when they're thinking about how they're going to make ends meet, I think that if we were to raise the salary of some of these elected positions, we could get more people like that who aren't independently wealthy, who don't have like a cushy law practice or something else, lobbying firm that they can be a part of. And I think that, I understand concerns about career politicians, but some of the people we got in office now have been career politicians. So I don't think that's diverting them. If anything, it's crowding out the folks who might otherwise be able to afford. It's the same way I look at unpaid internships. You look at the unpaid internships for the prestigious law firms, the clerks, or whatever else. They're all rich kids. They're all the kids of wealthy parents who can afford to subsidize their low income so that they can live in those expensive areas, do that work, and then get the good jobs later on. So I see the same dynamic happening here. I think if we were to, I also understand the concern of not wanting to put a hard number in statute. I've seen that at the legislature before, the problems with that, and I think it's gotta be pegged to something else. I think something like pegging it to median household income in the municipality or some other sort of independent metric would make sense, but I do think we gotta, if we don't wanna be a community that's only ruled by super rich people, we want regular, everyday people to have a voice, I think we gotta raise the wages for the commissioners. Thank you.
No one else? All right, I think obviously we have passed our 8 o'clock hour, but it is extremely important, I think, that we hear from the public, and it's also important that we share our opinions based on information that we've been provided. I think we've asked for maybe 2 or 3 things. Could you recap those for me?
Yes.
I'll tell you what I have, and then if I
Okay.
miss any of yours,
Yep.
Ms. Tolman, you can
We'll
add.
work with Jeff.
Number one, we are going to provide an opportunity for a portal or intake process of some kind for public input from those who might not be at a meeting. We need to address the question of WebEx access. That actually was one of the reasons we had the meeting in this room, is because that avenue is available, but apparently from feedback, something didn't work. We're gonna make sure we get that taken care of. We're gonna provide some information on best practices or other avenues toward setting salaries that some of our other cities around, other states was also mentioned there. We're going to provide some more specific feedback on what the county's language is regarding their positions in terms of salaries and full versus part-time. And those are the things that I have listed. Did I miss anything from your list? And then the committee can tell me what else I might.
Anything else?
Can I request the median and mean pay for city employees in general?
We'll provide some kind of.
Thank
data, yeah.
I have a quick question regarding the access to the public to our meetings. City Commission live streams their meetings on Talgo. Doesn't require a WebEx add-in or a Facebook or anything like that. Is there any reason we can't do that for these meetings? The Independent Ethics Board does the same.
Main reason I can't answer that is I can't do that, but I'll take that and discuss that with the chair before our next meeting.
Okay.
And we'll bring it
All right, any other comments? Thank you all so much. Thank you, public. This,
I'm known to be dead horses. I want to go back to something. So we were talking about, I started my question about what happens next, and looking at the schedule that was provided. This is where I got that from. It says that at the next meeting, we will vote on the number of electors. And so I just want to clarify that that's not what that's not the direction we're going. It's
I
on
think it's
here.
entirely tentative,
Okay, okay.
because we're not meeting on those dates either, so I think that was just a potential.
I believe what you're working with is what we brought to your first meeting, which was an effort to say, here's a timeline that if you followed it, would fit within the deadline you have to get to the city commission. We're not meeting on specifically those dates. Your next meeting will be February 1st, and that would not be on there. And the idea, I think, in that was similar to what you're talking about, which is you're not gonna take up an item and vote on it in that same meeting. You're gonna have an opportunity to come back and revisit it. So you are not required by that, or anything from staff at least, to vote on this at the next meeting. You would continue a discussion, I would assume.
So in our earlier discussion, we said that we would, at the end of discussion, decide when we were going to vote. If I'm not mistaken, that's how we left that conversation.
Madam Vice Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
If we have not adjourned this meeting, correct?
that's correct.
Then I make a motion that we publicly identify that we will vote no sooner than February 8th on the 2 issues discussed tonight, in order for the community to have time to submit suggestions, comments, etc.
Any opposition to that suggestion, and then we'll put it in form of a motion?
So if I had a question, this won't be the time to ask.
No, go ahead, yes.
My question is, if we did that and we kind of use that format for each of the items, will we be able to finish in time? If we can. in
I will
October.
say, I think these are two of the more complicated items. I think item 5 is, item 4, the CRC one is kind of complicated, how often they meet. I would argue that the third one is not as complicated as 1 and 2, I think.
And to that end, I'd like to make a motion for our next.
We have,
You gotta wait.
there's a
Oh,
motion
I'm
on the
sorry.
table.
There's a motion on the board.
My motion,
Seconded.
I was gonna
no
raise-
later than February the 8th, I mean, sorry, no sooner than February 8th.
Your second. All those in favor, any question? Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose have the same right. With that, we will conclude this
Did you have a
meeting.
motion?
One other,
Oh, not quite.
as in the end of the last meeting, we discussed the agenda for the coming meeting, and I think that would be appropriate here. As Chantel pointed out, the next 2 items we have to discuss, we covered 2 items today in discussion format. The next 2 are relatively less complicated, I think.
Thorny on these.
And so I would ask that both of the final 2 items of our 4 be included in the agenda for next week. And that's my motion.
I'll second that.
Ready for discussion?
Who was the second?
Jared.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose?
I have a motion to adjourn.
With that being said, do we need to request that staff provide us with any background material for those? We didn't go through that.
Yes.
If you have an item on your agenda, we're gonna do our best to provide you some information. If there's something in particular you need, contact us and we'll see if we can't incorporate it in some way to facilitate.
Thank you.
Did I carry that motion?
A motion to adjourn.
I did. To adjourn? All right. Motion to adjourn. We are have concluded this meeting. Thank you all. Thank you, public, for sharing with us.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Great job, Madam Chair.
Great meeting.
Jared, when I shake your hand, it ain't every day, yeah.
Next week.
No, that's, did you see my, cause I see you.